Hello, welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jerrod Downey. Today we have the CEO of Mind Vision Systems, Mike Smocer, on. They're pioneers in the 3D mapping space. And we're going to unpack a little bit about the technology, onboarding customers, a little bit of Mike's background. Welcome to the show, everybody. And Mike, welcome to Mining Now.
It's great to be with you, Jerrod. Thank you.
Where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Pittsburgh, as is our company. But as you might imagine, with the global business that we're in, we're spread around the world, especially in some mining hubs specifically.
So, did you go to Pittsburgh to start to be a part of the business? Did you found the business? Sorry.
I did not found the business and been around as a board member for about 2 years
I
and
saw that on your
CEO for
LinkedIn.
about 6 months.
Right. So are you from Pittsburgh, or did you go there for this position?
No, I'm from Pittsburgh, and in fact, part of what I'm doing right now has a lot to do with my belief in Pittsburgh technology and what's happening in the climate around Pittsburgh. So, this is second half of career stuff focused on startups, and Mind Vision Systems is in a great spot right now.
Yeah, I know. I've heard some good things. I've actually my wife, there's a pottery company in Pittsburgh, so we're basically going there just for that at some point. um,
Nice, nice.
Mind Vision Systems. Can you give us sort of that bird's eye view of who they are?
Yeah, sure. We're a mining technology company. What we do is we produce actionable insights from the digitization of a mine. Now, once a mine is digitized, that's when predictive insights become possible. And they relate to production, they relate to efficiency. And when done right, when the system is engineered right, it has a direct impact on worker safety, which is really top of mind for mining. Now, the technology around digitizing mines, that's existed, the piece parts, lidar sensors,
Hmm.
high definition cameras, LED lights, as simple as that. Certainly, computers have been around for a while to process information, but it's still very uncommon for precision digitization methods to be used in production, especially in underground, where it's GPS denied, where there's space constraints, people and machines moving around. So, who are we at Mind Vision Systems? We're a group of geologists, mining engineers, a great deal of experience in robotics. Part of our founding was out of the National Robotics Engineering Center here in Carnegie Mellon. And we have years of experience in building autonomous platforms. But for me, mostly what I'm proud of is the system that we've built and the philosophy that gets us there. So we focus so much not just on the cool technology, but rather how to apply that technology to solve specific problems. And the cross section of people and the attitude that I just described, that's really what's led us to our flagship product, and that's the FaceCapture mapping system.
That's let's actually go into the face. I want to talk about face capture. There's some questions I have, sort of about
Sure.
your background and building a team. I think we kind of need to touch on it. But let's go into your flagship product right now. Face capture
Sure.
mapping. I've seen it on your website, and I have a very very high level understanding of it. But maybe if you could sort of build it from the ground up for us.
Yeah, so the simplest way to say it is that we're producing information that allows for the mining companies, especially geologists, but many others, to leverage their experience and their knowledge so they can make better decisions. After all, I think much of digitalization is really about taking your top talent that has to make decisions every day.
Mm.
They know better than all others how to do that. But you ask the question, would you rather make decisions with better and faster information or with less information? And the obvious answer is with more. And that's essentially what we do for geologists that are making production decisions at a mine face on a day to day basis. So let me just describe how it works at the highest level. It is one engineered system, highly portable, basically carryable by the geologist as they make their rounds underground. With that device, there's a high definition camera embedded in the system. They take a picture of that mine face.
Mm-hmm.
They're then prompted with the software workflow to paint the face with the LiDAR scanner that's also embedded.
Mm.
At that moment, now you have a scan of the geology or the geometry. You have an image of what's happening at that mine face, but you don't have a location. You're in a GPS denied environment. So,
Right.
this is an important step. Um, this is a patent pending workflow that we have where prior to entering that mine, the geologist has downloaded a survey that has already occurred with or without us. That survey occurs. So it's part of an inherent in the software at that point. Once the picture is taken, once the scan is taken, All the user has to do is take a picture of 3 survey points, no special survey markers, no questions about accuracy within certain numbers of inches or feet. You literally have a geo-referenced scan that's processed within 2 to 6 minutes or so, plus or minus, right there at the mine face. Your decision material is there available to you without any post-processing. Think about what I did just state as requirements. No special targets for survey. As I mentioned, no post-processing. The compute power exists right there in the package with the geologist. You're not hauling around tripods. You're not hauling around extra lighting. It's a complete and portable engineered system that enables actionable intelligence right there while production is happening.
I want to actually get. I know there's some. I was reading an article yesterday. I believe Hecla Mining, who is actually coming on our show quite soon in the next couple weeks, I believe. Is they onboarded your product and are using it. And before I get into that, I wanted to. I'm just wondering, what does it take to make a system like this? Like you said, the lidar is already on there. The LEDs, you said something at the very beginning too that, and I forgot what you said.
A camera, high definition
Yeah,
camera.
the high definition camera. So you have all this working together. You have, before you enter into the underground mine, you have the survey that's downloaded in, and this all works together. And I'm just curious, what does it take? I'm of course geologists, some sort of technicians. What does it take to actually make this physical product and all the digitization within it? What kind of team does it take to put that together? I mean, skill set wise.
Yeah, a wide breadth of skills. Part of joining the company was evaluating that first. So,
Mm-hmm.
having been involved for decades in digitalization and industrial transformations in big manufacturing industries, the first thing you always check for is domain experience. There's, technology is ubiquitous. And while you have to have deep technology experience, there are a lot of technologies that never get off the ground. They're just a science project, mainly because they haven't been fully applied to an application. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I learned very early in my career is that the big things are semi-easy. You can get 95% of the technology built out, solving the problem. It's the last 5%, which is really about connecting it to the end user and the workflows that exist and the upstream and the downstream processes. All of those things are what prevents technologies in many cases from scaling, certainly, but in many cases, even getting off the ground. So that's how I look at a company when I join it, and how I looked at Mind Vision Systems. So you asked the question about what type of skill set. Well, at the core, what we are is we're a robotics and automation solution. Certainly, FaceCapture is all over the robotics end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And these perception systems require people that understand all of the new technologies that are going into it. Remembering that we came out of Carnegie Mellon University, we have skill sets that were built and honed inside Uber Advanced Technology Group here in Pittsburgh, inside the
Mm-hmm.
National Robotics Engineering Center. Okay, so that's the technology side. How do you build products that ultimately can be packaged? But what that doesn't do is get that last mile that I mentioned. The mining engineering, the geology,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a skill set there as well. And in fact, I think what you'll find is, I think roughly, if I just do some quick math on my head, 25 or 30% of our company right now has that background, that education, and that experience. I think what you'll find now that we're really scaling the company, with me coming on board 6 months ago, is that that percentage will start to go up considerably as we continue, to connect with the industry, to build out the technologies on the robotics side. So what did I just say? I said, look, it's robotics, it's automation, software development, if you want to get down to that level. It's
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to build embedded systems. And then on top of all of that, the thing that makes it possible, makes it usable, is the fact that we're a team of geologists and mining engineers, first and foremost. If we did not have that,
Mm-hmm.
we would just be a technology company. That's all.
Was that, from your knowledge, was that from the start? Were those geologists and mine engineers, were they part of the starting of it, or was it developed on the software side, and then those experts from that specific field came in later?
Yeah, so not much later. The ideas came out of robotics principally. We're in Pittsburgh. Mining isn't inherent in Pittsburgh, so
Right.
there's a deep connection between, first of all, robotics and then any number of applications that might exist in the industrial world, just based on
Right.
Pittsburgh being
I see.
a real center for that. But look, we were founded in 2015. We've spent over the course of the last 8 years, I think we counted them at some point, something like almost 4,000 trips into mines, doing different types of scans, both for
Wow.
inspection and for production. We have 60 plus man years in geology and mining collectively inside the company right now. Those experts began to be hired very soon after we started building the company back in 2015. We've done 50 engagements with the best and biggest and most innovative mining companies in the world in and around the technology that is inherent in FaceCapture and some adjacent technologies that will undoubtedly be part of our roadmap going forward. All of those things are what led us here. But yes, that was something that really was the company was built around initially, and as I said, will continue to be part of our future to greater degrees.
Yeah, and I promise to get to the Hecla mining here in a moment, but I want to
Sure,
stay on
sure.
this. I just want to stay on this for a moment. So you mentioned that last 5%. Here in our company, we talk about the last 1% of you know onboarding a new client, a new guest, an advertiser, and it's like if you miss that 1%, you miss 100%. You use the wrong word, you push too hard, you don't provide the proper data for them, you don't actually
Right.
answer their questions. If they've got to take it to someone else, you don't enable them to actually go present what they're trying to do with you properly because you rushed the meeting. All of these things. If you add them all up, it's 100%, but 1% is a zero. You just get nothing. Um, and so that's similar to what you're talking about, that so many of these projects develop, but that last little mile is so challenging for people. When did you start to identify that as the major stop in where that separates the technology that actually makes it to market from the one that just sort of fades away?
Yeah, you bring up a great point on the last 1%. So, when I first made the observation, there's nothing magic about the number 5%, but it's the principle around the topic I think that matters the most to
Hmm.
people. Certainly to me, I think the 5% for me was about the product development. You can solve this great thing. I have a lot of history in simulation technology, and you can
Okay.
do most of what somebody might need. But if you just miss the ability to ingest a file or to produce an output, or to make something nominally more easy than it already is, that can be the death knell for a product. But the 1% you're speaking of, it also resonates for me, with me. And here's how I would relate that to Mind Vision System. And I think what I've evaluated as that last 1% and why I think we're nailing it. The digital transformation is really hard for these companies.
Mm,
You're walking into, it's not just mining. I mean, think about every discrete manufacturing business or industry under the sun: aerospace and defense, consumer electronics, oil and gas, automotive, medical devices. They've all been doing things for quite a long time before digitalization ever came up. I
right.
joke sometimes with people that I've been involved with digitalization and promoting it long before it was ever called that, but now it's ubiquitous. Everybody says that word.
Hmm.
But you're walking into these industries. Now you get into process industries, chemicals and materials. Now you get into mining. They've all been remarkably successful long before you ever got there.
Right.
So if you're
Yeah.
walking in and you're saying, okay, what I'd like you to do is completely throw out everything that you're doing, or at least for a part of your business, and take a look at our cool technology and stop producing what you're paid to produce so that you can
Hmm.
implement this thing. And by the way,
Yeah.
okay, there's 16 inconveniences over here. Nobody will end up adopting it. You're literally putting your customers'
Yeah.
careers on their line when you're doing that. And as a technology supplier, I think that's important psychology for any supplier to understand. You literally are asking your customers to put their career on the line when you're asking them to make a decision in favor of your product.
Right.
Well, that's what I feel strongly about. And that's what I've seen is the difference between companies that succeed and companies that don't. How do we solve that problem? Or what do I see as the 1%? It's really two things. There are companies much larger than ours, and you know who they are, that are trying to solve the big digitalization, boil the ocean type of problem. And there are some of them that end up succeeding these types of implementations.
Hmm.
But there are plenty of business documents that you can find everywhere that talk about failures because a company got sold on this big, wonderful idea without understanding all of the nuance and the details associated with actually implementing it. And it ends up in business school studies, these things, and they're easy to find, right? Our perspective is this: you don't have to boil the ocean to start getting benefits from digitalization. You can take a simple to use tool,
Mm.
properly engineered and properly designed for a specific application, and you can get value without threatening all of your production decisions today and maybe tomorrow, without asking your company to buy so deeply into an
Mm.
idea that's never been implemented or may be questionable for your particular business before it's time. And what we do, and why FaceCapture I think is such a great product, is for anybody to use this. First of all, it's in great demand. Everybody, you don't have to sell it to anybody, the idea of digitizing a mine. Everybody that's in the mining community knows that would be valuable. Where
Yes.
they run into problems is, okay, how long will it take for me to process the information that we're digitizing? And is it valuable then? And to the extent that that value has declined, has it declined to such a degree that you're past the point of diminishing returns? It's too costly, it's more costly to implement than it is to, the value that we're getting out of it. So that's one particular area. The other one is that most of the equipment, it has to solve a big problem. Most of the solutions have to solve a very big problem in order to be valuable, because they're big and weighty. There's a lot of installing that's required. There's a lot of special considerations that need to be made. And I'm not, and there are some amazing solutions that are doing that just perfectly well. It's not a question of that. But there's a bigger burden for a company to say yes to a solution like that. With us, literally, geologists are already making these rounds. They want to get to more mine faces. They want better information.
Yeah.
And this is something literally they can just walk around with and be trained on in a half hour. It becomes a no-brainer for the best and brightest companies and the individuals within them to get this information, because it simply is not cumbersome at all.
Um, Circling back to Hecla Mining, that's I think they're the biggest silver producer in the U.S. I think North America. If someone wants to fact check me on that, please feel free. But they're such a major player. Can you? I always like sort of origin stories on these types of things. It's a little bit of that entrepreneur background that I bring is just knowing that first day that someone's even willing to have the conversation with you and start that process. And Hecla Mining, I mean, that's about as big as it gets, really. So, can you do you know the origin story of how that conversation got started with them, and then going through the process of them actually onboarding the technology?
No, unfortunately, I do not. Here's what I would say, though, and Hecla can certainly speak for themselves, but we're very proud to have them as a partner. And if you do any research on Hecla, you'll find out how innovative a company they are.
Mm-hmm.
And any of the audience can see the press release that that announced the partnership that we have
Yeah,
and
we'll put a link
their
to it as
access
well.
to FaceCapture. That'd be great. But here's what I would say in general. Look, as I said, we spent 8 years working with the mining industry in all manner of scanning applications. Hecla clearly was one of those, based on what you can all see publicly at this point. And their partnership with us has been instrumental. They are not the only ones. They're the only ones that are public right now, and you'll start to see
Mm.
a steady stream of additional announcements as time goes on here. I'll generally characterize that history and what it's meant for us, Jerrod, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Look, we like all companies, technology companies that I've seen and been a part of, especially in industrial applications. In other words, I'm not a B2C guy. Um, the applications that I've seen, or the stories that I've seen, are start with great idea with some connection to a specific domain or a specific industry. Start building out that idea and testing the waters with key players. Do consulting projects, basically insulating the end user from the inconvenience of a lack of an interface or whatever else. Eat your own dog food by testing your technology and delivering results for
Mm.
companies, and build it out into or to a level that ultimately allows users to access the technology and use it for their own benefit. But only do so after you've tested it, again, by insulating the customer from all of those inconveniences as you're building a
Mm.
product. So we spent 8 years doing that. And look, there have been a lot of success stories in that time. There definitely have been a lot of, lessons learned going down some wrong roads, but that's the character now of the company, the experience that we have behind us and what's led us to FaceCapture. Now, with Hekla and let's just say a few other companies, they have led us to this application. To me, in my simplified world, I'm sure there's somebody in mining that spent 30 years that may characterize it differently, and they would be right too. But in my simplified view of the scanning world, the digitization world of the life of a mine, intended and otherwise, you end up drilling a mine, it converges, that's unintended. You drill a shaft, you have to inspect it. If there's a problem, you have to fix it. That's unintended. If you're at a mine face and you're blasting and you're trying to track a seam, that's intended. But in any case, all of that scanning, they fit into two basic characters. One is production applications. That's where FaceCapture fits.
Yeah.
The other one is inspection applications, which might be more periodic. It probably wouldn't surprise you that our customer base, as we've been working with all of these applications over 8 years, said, if you could only do this at the production phase, it would have XYZ value, and has basically led us to this. So it's not an
Right.
idea that was foreign to us necessarily, but the extent of the value, the disproportionate value, by solving some of these key production problems at the face was really reinforced and emphasized by Hekla and other customers as we've been working with them over the last 8 years.
I don't remember, maybe zero to one or something. I forget who wrote that book, but there was, and I don't even remember if it's that book, but it talks about um, following your customers. And I'm sure, I mean, you probably know that principle even much better than I do, but it to not, do you think one of the pitfalls that people run into with on getting their technology into the market is doing that? They go, no, we solved this problem. We're in this bucket. And then they're not willing to do sometimes the very hard work of doing an actual pivot. It might be quite a few degrees over to now get over onto this side where the customers are demanding and have the biggest demand and will see the biggest value. Is that a pitfall that you see?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a real dilemma that companies have, and
Mm.
to me, the best companies, there's some optimization of having focus, but also being flexible.
Yeah, it's
And
not an easy balance though. It really is a difficult thing.
yeah, so the way that you address that, or the way that I've always thought to address that, is that validate, validate, validate. And
Mm.
look, my entire background in technology has really been following it up from the customer facing side of business. Having to, okay, here's our great product and how wonderful it is, and then having a customer say, well, it's not as great as you think. Well, that's where the rubber meets the road. It's either good or bad based on what your customers say. And you may have this great idea that you just spent time executing on for a
Mm.
period of time and maybe put on some blinders um, with regard to your customers. And then based on that exposure, find out it's not quite what you expected. And you can continue down that road. And clearly, you know where that road goes. Or you can choose to go a different direction. So here's the way I would think about Mind Vision Systems in that respect. Um, the benefit that I have coming in as CEO is that with FaceCapture and well beyond FaceCapture, we have enormous experience to do any number of different things in mining applications,
Mm.
plenty. So that is both a benefit and a curse, Jerrod,
Right.
as
Yeah.
you indicated a moment ago. The good news is that it didn't take me coming on board for the company to recognize the importance of working with customers. And look, as I said, I was on the board for 18 months before I got here. So um, it wasn't on a whim that I ended up joining. I was able to see the extent to which we were connected
Right.
to customers and how they were driving this development. And I saw in it in Mind Vision a company that already had gotten beyond some of the biggest problems that technology companies that maybe don't give themselves a chance to scale. They were already addressing those problems by validating, validating, validating with
Mm.
customers and getting that type of feedback. That is essentially part of our DNA. There are any number of things that I have in my new role here as CEO in terms of driving the company, but this is not a cultural aspect that I had to spend any time teaching.
That's
It was
amazing.
already
That really
it
is.
was already inherent in the
Yeah.
company, and I think our product vision, while focused, it also leaves a great room for flexibility based on the input that we get over from our customers in the coming years, and that's what makes me most excited.
How do you onboard yourself as CEO coming into a position like this?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There are usually there are any number of big things that any executive, CEO or not, has to focus on when they come into companies. You try to recognize where the strengths of the company are, and then just pour gas on it and get out of the way.
Mm.
You also
I think
you
I'm gonna. I
also
think I'm gonna borrow that. That's great.
and so you also you want to then focus on the things that are gaps, and
Mm.
properly hired. I think any executive, and whether it's me coming on board here or me hiring somebody else elsewhere, you tend to think about the company where it is at the time, and you hire for those gaps. So in a perfect world, the onboarding, while it's always drinking from a fire hose, in a perfect world, the onboarding for an executive, it goes to that executive's strengths. So think about where my Vision Systems was. We had a CEO prior to me that was, probably the chief recruiter for me coming on board, who is a roboticist, has spent years in different startups building technologies from ideas to products
Mm.
that are solving real world problems, recognizes that he is neither interested nor believes he has the full skill to drive and scale a company as CEO, but loves focusing on that technology. And he's
Mm.
directly involved with our non-dilutive R&D funding right now, which is not something you see publicly, but is part of the flexibility and the options and working with the industry that we have. So for me coming on board, the state of the company was it had already gotten to the point where, as I said, we've assessed the opportunities that exist in the market for FaceCapture, and what the lowest hanging fruit solutions that we could solve for our customer base were. And now it's time to think about how to scale a company beyond we have all of these ideas and let's figure out which one we want to really focus on, to okay, we have some very concrete ideas validated by customers with customer use that we now want to scale and use that as the foundation point to grow the company. And as you ask, what are some of the how do I onboard to a company? A lot of it was already, the path was set for me
Mm.
by our former CEO and by our investors, specifically Rockwell Venture Capital, who's 100% behind this company and sees this opportunity at this
Mm.
moment in time and at this inflection point for Mind Vision Systems to now start really realizing the promise of all of that great technical work, all of that credibility built by working with the mining industry for the last 8 years.
Just gonna ask one quick last question on just your professional world right now is, do you is it stressful to you, or have you done this work now enough now that when you come into the day, these challenges that come up, and I mean you're entering a very old industry to say the least, and you've got a product that I mean, and just from coming out of the mining world myself, when you see that Hekla's on board something, that means something. It really does, because we kind of all know Hekla. I've interviewed them before. They're coming on again, and so do you do you feel pressure? What is your sort of your professional outlook as you go into your sort of your day to day, the months, the years, and as you're piecing all this together?
I wouldn't characterize it as pressure. I mean, there are people in this world that have real pressures,
Yeah.
beyond leading a technology company. I love the game,
Mm.
Jerrod. I always have. I think unless you love the game, then you shouldn't be doing these types of things. So to me, it is fun. That doesn't mean there's a lack of stress, but it's the right kind of stress. We all are at our best
Right.
when we have a certain level of stress in our lives, and I think recognizing the type of stress that you thrive on and the type that you
Mm.
don't is important part of experience and aging, as I fortunately am aging like the rest of us. Um, but the other part of it is that I always felt I always had a sense of duty, no matter who it was to. But certainly, as you're leading a company, if you're looking at my background, right behind my so left shoulder, right shoulder, depending on how it's coming across.
Yeah.
It was a drawing of my late father who did this before he was born. He was an engineer's engineer. He wasn't a business builder, a salesperson. He wasn't anything like that, but he was a gentleman who, just loved working on nuclear reactor cores, and in his spare time built and engineered everything else.
Let me
That's the
say,
type of
when
guy
his
he
spare
was.
time built a nuclear or something, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, so no, wait, that was his profession. But you're looking at a
Yeah.
telescope design he built over my
Wow.
shoulder. So I respect people like that, and
Mm,
I feel a strong sense of duty to the best and brightest of the world that are building these
yeah.
technologies. So if there's stress, it's really the duty that I have to all of them. What I will say though as well is that I had a former CEO that said this better than anybody I've ever heard in terms of the respect that we have for the industries that we serve. Um, we know and we have great ideas about where our technology applies, no matter what technology business you're in or who you're speaking to. Um, but there are some unbelievable customers and there's unbelievable innovation that happens in every one of these industries. And until you work with all of these different industries, it's hard to appreciate the depth of knowledge that's there.
Mm,
And as I mentioned, I've worked with nearly every industry under the sun at this point. And one observation I will make is every industry does something better than all of the others.
mm,
And part of the value that I can provide to our customers and our company is having experienced all of these different industries. I can help counsel those on how to deploy these types of technologies, the things to look for. We're not after the first sale, we're after long-term partnerships. Partnerships aren't how many do you want and here's the price. Partnerships are working together to build out new technologies beyond the foundations that we're building. And I think having that respect for your customers is really important. So I mentioned what this former CEO said. He would counsel, his entire team. He said, understand when you're working with customers, they know way more than you'll ever know about their business. So don't pretend like you know as much as them.
mm.
Go in and try to align to the things that matter to them, ask questions, learn what's important to them, and then figure out ways to connect the technology to their expertise.
Right.
Don't go in presumptuously. Don't tell them how they should be thinking. Try to understand what affects them day to day. That's how you build products. That's how you build partnerships.
That yeah, yeah. I certainly couldn't say it better myself on that. The just before we wrap up, what's oh, I wanted to ask you the just a quick business model question.
Yeah.
How do people bring on the product? Is it what's the format?
Yeah, so we're a robotics as a service model. As a service models are clearly very common. They give flexibility to both customers and to companies selling the product. So, the system itself, it's an embedded system. It's a hardware software. We generally are selling on 2-year contracts,
Mm,
mostly, and that pricing enables all maintenance, all service, everything else for the period of that year, and they're in possession of that device for that period of time. There is no limit to the number of scans, the number of faces that they can map during that time. And we feel that's the best way to enable growth of our
mm.
technology and to broaden out those partnerships that I mentioned that we covet within our customer base.
What over the next few years? What's sort of your vision, your goal? Where would you like to see the company pushing towards?
So look, there are 4 basic principles, and I say this to both customers and new investors that I think drive most of what we do and how we think about product development. One is frictionless mind digitization. We just feel like, if you make that so hard, you're dead on arrival. That's the raw material that enables so much else. So that's pretty important. And FaceCapture embodies that principle. The second principle is context aware processing and workflows. And, okay, let's say we collect the data, it's frictionless, but then you require a day and a half in order to process something, or the workflow is so cumbersome that the user can't get to it reasonably or can't process the data in a way that's useful to them, then that also precludes adoption.
Mm,
We believe in predictive insights in AI, and there is a long road on that one, and they become almost self-evident once you start collecting data and processing it in a meaningful period of time. And then finally, there's remote and autonomous operations as you start thinking into connecting into the existing communications architectures and infrastructure, which isn't necessarily easy in the mining world, especially underground. But you start to think about all of the opportunities that exist there. So with that broad outline, I can give you a high level view. Here are the immediate priorities beyond having delivered FaceCapture.
Mm.
One is connectivity to existing mine communications infrastructure. Again, that will enable predictive insights, AI, and machine learning, along those lines. Remote operations and monitoring. Once you're involved with connectivity, now you can start monitoring things in a control room. You can think about the possibilities there. And finally, that gets us all out into autonomous operations. And I mentioned the extent of our experience, building those types of platforms, both now and in our past. The second big thing is driving further into our principle of frictionless mine digitization. There's a long road to go there too. It's beyond just what we're scanning. There are plenty of opportunities out there to do more mine digitization in ways that are non-invasive for a customer that produces all of those great insights. So we're going to be working really hard on nailing those things. I'm focusing on those two areas. But none of that is binary and digital. There's a road to hoe on each one of those directions that are part of our roadmap. And as we've talked about for much of this conversation, we'll be paying very close attention to our customer base.
Well, I hope I hope we get to have you back on at some point, Mike, to sort of update us, and I'm sure it's going to be a quite evolving story for Mind Vision Systems. So thank you very much for coming on. I enjoyed chatting with you. Yeah, I was taking some mental notes, especially on the leadership side. So thank you very much for joining the show.
Happy to be here. I appreciate it, Jerrod.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. We've got lots of Mind Now episodes coming out. We're going to have links to Mind Vision Systems. You can check out some of what they're doing. Their website's quite good at sort of just walking you through it. So check that out. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.